Yes, hello and welcome everybody to tonight's live episode from Wrestle Line. I'm your host John Scott, joined as always by my co-host Matt Essex. And Matt, want to bring you in here back to our old ways, our current ways, I guess, like we used to do on the Skull podcast. Here we are for the first time on Wrestle Line, and tonight all things current. Coming up on the show. But Matt, how you doing first and foremost? You've been a little bit under the weather, but thankfully your voice is holding out.
Yeah, it's not too bad. At least you can understand what I'm saying. So I'm grateful for that. I hate to miss the show, so I'm glad I can actually give my opinions in some way.
Yep, you're grateful. I'm ecstatic because, I think to come back and to have had to have done the first show on my own would have been a lot of pressure for me to do. I'm not sure I would have pulled through with it, to be honest. So I'm really glad Matt is joining us here tonight, and really glad also for everybody that's listening live, or maybe you're listening to us in the week, or maybe you're listening to us a year later. Who knows? These podcast episodes last for a long time, but whoever you are, just want to welcome everybody to the show. If you're a first-time listener, please hit the subscribe button afterwards if you like what you hear. And you can go back on our archive and all our other episodes that we normally do. So listen, normally Wrestle Line, for those that have been keeping up with our more recent work, we've been doing a lot of wrestler timelines. We've been covering the likes of Shamrock, Lex Luger and Big Daddy Cool Diesel. And tonight, immediately following this podcast, as a big thank you to all our listeners, I am putting out straight away the first part of, arguably, Matt, one of the greatest wrestlers in WWE. Yes, I'm going to be a little bit biased because I am. He is my favourite wrestler. I believe he's yours as well. So, okay, we might be a bit biased on that. But arguably, such a really good timeline to cover. And it is none other than Bret the Hitman Hart, Part 1, immediately following this podcast. So it will be available to be downloaded or listened to immediately following this podcast. And Matt, just to give a little preview to that, of all the ones we've done so far, I know we're still going through. We're still actually recording all these parts, but where do you put it as far as what some of the listeners can will be in for with Bret's timeline?
Well, there's going to be a lot of ups and downs, that's for sure. But just as many downs are equally ups, and I appreciate all the high moments in his career because, we was there, we was on that journey with him, and it's good that we get to relive some of that now. Yeah.
So don't forget, folks. Immediately following this, you can download that from all the various platforms, which include Podcast Addict, Spreaker, iTunes, or even on YouTube, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio.com, and I'm sure we're on a lots more others as well out there. And of course, lots of following all over the globe. We had on the Wrestling Skull podcast, so I'm sure we've got a similar amounts as always. But so we've been doing a lot of timelines, and tonight we did a little preview from last week, but tonight is the first show. So coming up on the show, we're going to be talking all things WWE Survivor Series, whether we actually think the fans really care about this rivalry. We'll discuss that, myself and Matt. We're going to also dive into the European tour from the WWE as well. They're over here at the moment. Going to hit that as well. And everybody, by popular demand, has been asking me about the WWE 2K18 game. Have I played it? No. Matt has, though, so that's great news for me and great news for you. So he's going to give us a little insight. I'm interested as well on all that. And plus, we're going to have all the latest wrestling news, including this coming out a little I think this has come out earlier on today, Matt. I don't know if you heard this news, but I've had a lot of emails about it, believe it or not, so I thought I'd start it off with this. P. Diddy's changed his name, Matt, and it's to Brother Love, and we've had a lot of emails about this, so there's some conflict going on with, of course, Bruce Pritchard, who played Brother Love in WWE, and there's been some news coming out of the wrestling quarters. There's a bit of heat on P. Diddy for this. Matt, did you catch this bit of news, or is this is this breaking news to your ears?
It is breaking news to me now, and may I say, a little bit bizarre. I didn't see that coming.
No, neither did I. There's a lot of funny pictures going around on Facebook that I've seen. So, yeah, that's been going on. If I find out any more news as we go along on this episode, I'll let us all know. But, Matt, I want to start the show it's hard, isn't it, to start it in too much of a positive way, but it's WWE Survivor Series coming up, Matt, and this is going to be the one we'll be coming back ourselves. We'll be reviewing that show as well, just for everybody who doesn't know how we operate here. We're going to be all the sort of I would say the bulk of the pay-per-views we'll be literally doing a review on. We might not cover all of them, but we'll definitely do the main ones and ones we think are worth doing in the coming months. But we're going into Survivor Series, Matt, and quite a few matches are already booked. But of course, one of this whole things is about this sort of, is it fabricated? Is it just too much pushed down our throats? Is it something that doesn't even exist? And it's this kind of brand supremacy, this rivalry, Matt. Now, of course, the brand extension hasn't really, it's not been around for more than, what is it now? Like, coming up to sort of 2 years now, something like that. So it's sort of early days compared to sort of when it all sort of took place last time. And, you know, when we finally got to these sort of brand versus brand things, it was like probably about 4 years in, I think, before they even sort of did anything too much like that. But now we've already got it where, we have all the SmackDown guys coming on Raw, and they all wearing the T-shirts, like they're Team SmackDown, and that's who we are. But Matt, for you, is this whole, do fans really care about SmackDown guys and Raw guys taking on each other, like defending their brand, or is this all a bit of a kind of fabricated and sort of put in your face, shoved down your throat as per normal? Something that WWE are just trying to get over, but there is no value. Or am I wrong, Matt? Is there something with all this? What's your take on it?
Well, the hard part to believe is like when they ignore each other for a whole year, and then all of a sudden, at this time of the year, then they start getting involved with each other, and then the rivalries start to bubble, and then you get Jinder coming out, calling out Brock, and it makes no sense. So just things like that just takes you out of the moment, really. I mean, when they did the Under Siege kind of angle from SmackDown and they invaded Raw, okay, yeah, that is kind of interesting, and it does actually create a little bit of heat between the shows, but it just seems so rushed. Like, all of a sudden there's this heat, because they were lending them AJ Styles before that, we'll do anything to help each other out because we're part of the same company, and it's hard to feel like animosity between two shows when you know they're part of the same company. I think, like me and you have spoke about it many times, when you think about a show struggling against another one, it's more likely to be NXT because it's Triple H's vision versus Vince's vision.
Yeah, well, yeah, that would have made much more sense, and I think there would have been a real, I think from fans' perspective, it would have been like, if you're an NXT person that's watching that show regular, you would have probably pulled for them. But I've got to be honest, Matt, I mean, I watch Raw and SmackDown, probably more Raw, but listen, do I really care who wins out of the teams? Not really. I don't care if a SmackDown beat the Raw guys. I have no loyalties to either show. And here's why. They're both WWE and they both are so similar. They're a different roster. But honestly, I think it's just made up heat all over. There's nothing in it. I think here's the difference, because people might want to go back and look at and say, well, did it work when they did it last time? And I felt like it did, because you got some moments. Like, I remember this, I think it was WrestleMania 20. And I remember there was like a bit at the back where JBL came along and then Triple H came along with Evolution. And they were both champions. They were both heel champions. And, JBL started to sort of mug Triple H off that he was the so-called wrestling god. I'm sure you remember that, Matt. And then you had Triple H, who kind of just sort of laughed in his face and said, I'm sure if you say it enough times, somebody will believe you. But, you know, things like that, I kind of got more of a sense that there was a little bit of rivalry, especially with the ratings, especially when Paul Heyman was writing for them as well. And both shows were very different. Like, Raw was much more of the sort of entertainment type side, and SmackDown seemed like they were going a very sort of amateur style wrestling sort of side of things. And there was a distinct thing. Also, the whole show looked different. The presentation was different. The production was different. And the biggest thing is they were kept apart for such a decent amount of time that you could really build that out. But the thing is, Matt, I find this whole internal rivalry that they're trying to create, Matt, I don't think, in all seriousness, I don't think it would ever work, quite frankly, the way they present it. I don't know what your take is on that, but the only way for me it would ever really, fans would ever really care, because you can't tell me, Matt, that when WWE roll into your town or city or whatever and you go along, Matt, if you book for Raw and SmackDown, okay, because most people kind of would do that, or maybe you're just fortunate enough to see one, but listen, you're not going to be like, oh no, there's a SmackDown guy on my Raw show. Oh, how bad is that? I want the Raw guys to kick their ass. That's just not going to happen. And also, you know, if you're going to both shows, do you really care? I think it would make a lot of difference if, say, SmackDown and Raw run on completely different circuits, and say SmackDown took, I don't know, the southern half, and then Raw took the north. That might be like a territory thing. That would actually probably work. But listen, the WWE, they go everywhere, so they're all at the same place. So to me, it makes no difference at all. It's going to be really, really hard to make any sort of distinction that there is real animosity going on between each other. And the other thing to that effect, Matt, is I feel like the current superstars and wrestlers, I think I've seen all these guys feud so many times over as it is anyway, even before the brand extension. A lot of these guys, even on NXT, I've seen them already. So, you know, is there really that many fantasy matches? Not really, in my opinion, that whole thing. But Matt, I can't remember, Matt, but correct me if I'm wrong, but when the SmackDown guys come over to Raw, did they they mixing heels and faces together, or was it just heels?
Yeah, no, they were. Yeah, Bobby Roode was there.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Zack Ryder was there,
and that's what makes no sense either. You know, I mean, if it was just a couple of guys or a faction, I would prefer that more. If it was like, just say Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens just showed up and just really started cussing off, or even started cussing off SmackDown or whatever, I could see that, you know, and maybe just them up against, say, the Shield or something for a month. That I could see being quite decent. But let's face it, the whole entire roster, like, coming to each other's aid, putting personal differences to one side, yet the next night on SmackDown, they're all fighting each other. I mean, honestly, it makes absolutely no sense at all, in my opinion. And, yeah, it's just odd. Is there any sort of solution for this, Matt, or do you think there is a way of making this come across good, and it won't be as bad as what I'm kind of viewing it as, in terms of the whole, you know, we now know that we know who's involved, but this whole thing, Matt, with, of course, Stephanie McMahon come out last week on Raw, and there was that little part with Kurt Angle. Did that bring anything to it? Are people more on the edge now because that's the stipulation, or do you think it's just... Because from my perspective, Matt, and probably because I've been watching wrestling for so long, this just seems sort of like very much recycled stuff I've seen before, and it just seems like we're